See him? Got him right next to the boat, Dad.
That was pretty funny.
Good thing I'm not a baseball player, because that was a swing and a miss 3 times. I would have been struck out, but he really wanted this spinner, Dad.
I guess so. No need for laning it. You got it under control.
Yeah. Whoa. Settle him down for a second here. Wow. Our first Lake Nipigon brook trout. Hey, my name's Jake Romanack, and you're watching Fishing 411. On this week's episode, we're up on Lake Nipigon, and we've come a long ways to catch some of these gorgeous brook trout. This one's a little bit small, but I'm telling you what, if you stick around on this week's episode, I think you're going to see some absolutely gorgeous Lake Nipigon brook trout. You know what? There is absolutely nothing better than watching a fish follow right to the boat and hit it right at the boat. Still not a giant, Dad, but a little bit nicer fish here.
That's a beautiful fish. I don't care what you say.
Man.
That's a gorgeous looking fish right there.
You know, you get spoiled in Lake Nipigon standards. This is, you know, a world-class fish just about anywhere you go. But they grow them big here on Lake Nipigon. Oh, man.
Good looking fish. I'm telling you, that's the sight that anybody's heart would start pounding to see that.
You want to scoop them for me, Dad?
I'm gonna. I just was hoping maybe I could get a double header going on here, so I was procrastinating. We'll use this little rubber net here. Look at that.
Scoop them, Dad.
Be real
Cool.
gentle on these guys. I'll hold him right over there for you, Jake.
Yeah, that's a much nicer fish.
Got a little bit of weight there. Look at that spinner pop
Yep.
right out of his mouth. That's one of the.
That's perfect.
I think you need to talk a little bit about the whole idea of barbless hooks here.
Yeah, you know, and that's actually the law here on Lake Nipigon, is you have to have barbless hooks, which means that you got to be a pretty good fish fighter too, because these trout, they just like to roll, and they come off pretty easy. But just like that fish popped right off in the net. Easy come, easy go. We're gonna put this one back.
Beautiful.
Wow, so pretty. Off like a rocket. The name of this brook trout fishing in the springtime is very much water temperature driven. When we were running across the lake today, the actual main basin of the water was 38 degrees. Cold, very cold. And so what we had to do is we had to try to find some warmer water. In this island that we found, there's a cut that comes back up into the island. We took it all the way to the back of the cut and we found some 44-degree water. And we've made a few casts and caught a fish right away here. So that's the name of the game. You find warmer water, you find these trout.
Let's take a second and talk a little bit about rigging when you're fishing with spinners. What most people will do is they'll take a ball bearing swivel, tie it to the end of their line, and then attach that to the spinner. And the reason for it is to eliminate line twist, and that does work pretty good. But one of the problems that we've noticed is that when you add that extra hardware, that ball bearing swivel at the end, it tends to want to come around and sometimes catch on the blade. And so what will happen is that, not every cast, but every once in a while, say maybe every 4th or 5th cast, you'll have a fouled cast and you're getting nothing out of that. Well, a way around this is that to avoid line twist, you still want to have a swivel, but you can use an inline swivel. So tie a swivel to the end of your fishing line. We're using monofilament. And then tie a fluorocarbon lead or something about 18 to 24 inches to the swivel, and then tie that directly to your spinner. That way you have less hardware at the spinner will run true, you'll catch more fish, and you'll have no problems with line twist.
Nice fish.
Got the hot hand here, man.
Oh, I didn't see that one chase, Dad. That one actually bit a long ways out. But that is the importance of these long rods when it comes to this style trout fishing. We're actually using steelhead rods, which might seem like a little much when it comes to catching these brook trout, but there are some big brook trout in here. This is a big one too.
It's a nicer fish, yeah. Nice job, Jaker.
These fish are laying right up on the beach. Key is to get that spinner right next to it. That's a
my
good
goodness.
fish.
What a gorgeous fish.
Oh, he's not ready yet.
Oh man, I guess
They
not.
just never
We'll let
quit.
you fight a little bit more here for the camera, Jake. And now we can walk.
There we go.
There we go. Look at that. You got it going on, Jake. Each fish you catch is a little bit bigger. You started out with a modest one, then you got a good one. Now you got a much better fish. That's a representative brook trout for Lake Nipigon right there. That's
Absolutely. This one just crushed it. I missed him. I set the hook and I missed him. I started reeling again and I got about one reel handle in and he crushed it, Dad. Whoa. It is a long ways up to Lake Nipigon, a lot of time in a vehicle, an absolutely massive lake. But when you're talking about fish this gorgeous, it's worth every second of it. Wow.
You got the hot stick, my friend. You got the hot stick.
All right, this one's gonna go right back. Oh yeah, no problem. There she goes.
Special considerations provided by Eagle Claw, proudly made in America since 1925. Additional considerations provided by Fishhawk Electronics. Trolling without a fishhawk is called boating.
This animal right here is the ticket that's been getting it done for us today, and it's the Rooster Tail from Yakima Bait Company. And this little bugger, the reason why this Vibrick spinner is so cool is because you can slow retrieve it. A lot of spinners, you have to reel relatively fast to get that blade pumping. But in this cold water, we can throw these Vibricks long ways, slow retrieve them back, and still get that nice thump on the blade. These fish are right tight up onto the bank in this cold water. Every fish that I've caught so far this morning has been literally, you watch it, as soon as the spinner hits the water right on the edge, you make one reel cast and the fish is on right there. So it's really important to get these spinners up tight to the bank. It's also important to be able to slow roll and have a nice, easy retrieve right back to the boat.
All that down wood in the water pretty much guarantees that there'll be some minnows hanging around. Well, since Jake's catching all the fish here today, I've got plenty of time to fill in the cracks and talk a little bit about why these brook trout are the way they are early in the spring. Jake touched base on something about the water temperature, and that's a critical part of what's going on here. Warmer water is close to the bank, and these fish are close to the bank, but there's also something else going on. It's that brook trout are structure-loving fish. Normally you find these fish in places like rivers, and they're going to be up against an undercut bank, or they're going to be behind a boulder or a down log. They do exactly the same thing in lake environments like Nipigon. They want their tail right up against some structure so they can ambush as food goes by. So when you're casting these spinners, you have to get them right up on the bank. And I recommend closing the bail before the spinner actually touches the water. That way, when the spinner does splash down, the blades are going to start spinning immediately, and literally within the first turn of the reel handle is when most of these strikes are occurring. The fish are right on the bank. You can't be afraid. If you're afraid that you're going to snag by casting too close to the shore, you're not going to catch these fish. You got to be fearless. You got to throw it right up there where the fish live, and you'll catch more brook trout.
Oh, this is a good one. My heart's just pounding right now. I think this is definitely going to be the biggest one of the day so far.
I'm not sure what's going on here, but all the bites are coming on your end of the boat.
Scoop 'em.
Almost knocked him off, darn it. Oh, that is, oh man, what a stellar fish that is, Jake. Oh, goodness. Look at, that's what a brook trout is supposed to look like. Unbelievably gorgeous.
My heart's just a pound and pop up.
Congratulations, kid. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous fish.
Wow. Well, Dad, I think that answers my question if that other color Vibrick Rooster Tail is going to work. Maybe 3 casts in.
I think a variety of colors will work, and it's nice to experiment with that stuff. But being on fish is always more important than colors. But I know what you mean. When you get confidence in a color after you've caught a few on it, you kind of want to stick with it.
Especially with this style of fishing, because this is cast after cast after cast, covering big, long miles, stretches of water casting. You want to have confidence in it, and I just actually threw off my favorite color. That was my last one of my favorite color, but I tied this one up, 3 casts. We got it. So obviously this color of the Vibrick works just as good.
Nicely done, son. You know, water temperature is something that changes as the day progresses. It's morning right now, and the warmest available water is right skinny on the beach, right up tight to the beach. But it's sunny as well, and so as the day progresses, I would expect that the water will warm a few degrees and these fish will slide off the bank a little bit, and we might find them in that 3 to 5 to 6 foot of water in a little bit deeper water. So it's in the morning, it's a really good time to be pounding the bank. As the day progresses and the water warms, you can fish a little bit deeper and see, search for those fish that might be a little bit further off the bank. But in the mornings, you definitely want to start shallow. So I'm expecting at any second for this to go ding, and that's going to be the end of it. But sure is fun to fight them here. Oh, my rooster tail is more valuable to me than this fish is right now. Let's see what it is. Well, that's not what I was looking for, but they're going to be here. Ironically, the species that you're going to find here, you're going to find brook trout, you're going to find lake trout, of course northern pike and walleye. And the northern pike are always going to be close to where the trout are because they like to eat them. It's just that simple. And that one right there that we just caught is clearly big enough to eat a lot of the trout that we've caught today. So unhook him, retie because he probably boogered up my leader. See if we can't get a brook trout. Well, I just caught a northern pike, which is not what I'm trying to do. And they have a distinctive odor, and of course they're predator fish. And trout are afraid of them for obvious reasons. So first thing I did was wash my hands to get that scent off my hands. And then I'm going to reapply fish oil to my spinner to try to camouflage any scent of pike on. I don't want my spinner to smell like a pike. I want it to smell like something good to eat.
Special considerations provided by Bait Rigs Tackle, America's innovator of fine fishing products. Additional considerations provided by the Ultimate Sports Show Tour, Michigan's premier sports shows.
You know, in a lot of fishing applications, we find that the hooks that come on our favorite lures really aren't ideal for the fishing situation in hand. Maybe the hook is too small or too big, or in many cases, we actually switch out the hook for a completely different style of hook. For example, I've got this Rooster Tail spinner here, and it's got a treble hook on it, and it's been pretty beat up. The hook is in bad shape because it's caught a lot of fish. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove it by just taking a side cutters, get down in here real quick, and cut it off, and take that hook and get rid of it. And I'm going to replace it with what we think is an ideal hook. It's called the Siwash hook. And the reason I like a Siwash is because it has an open eye. It's really easy to put on there. All I need to do is thread it back on, put the hook back on the shaft of the wire itself, and I'm just going to take a pair of needle nose pliers here and bend it down to close the eye. Perfect. What I've done in a matter of seconds is I've taken this Rooster Tail spinner and I've replaced the standard treble hook with a Siwash hook. And you're wondering, why would a guy want a single hook? Well, this single Siwash has got a long point on it. Once it bites the stay bit. And there's no leverage here. Fish can't shake and get off very easily. These happen to be Eagle Claws. Eagle Claw makes two types of Siwash hooks. They make one in their Laser Sharp series, and the one I have on here is their Trocar. If you want the sharpest hook in the world, you want an Eagle Claw Trocar, just like this Siwash I have in my hand. Oh, that's a little guy. Jake has got it going on here today, and I've got the small trout thing going on. Just a tiny little brook trout. Kind that a guy would catch in the stream and be tickled with. Let him go back, away he goes. I guess what impresses me more than anything about Nipigon is the fact that there's lots of trout. Jake has caught some pretty respectable trout here today, and there's much bigger ones to be caught. But we've caught a lot of trout in different size classes, small, medium, and high quality fish as well. So that tells me that this fishery is very, very healthy. Lots of fish here, lots of different classes of fish as far as for year classes. You can't go wrong. There's a smelt floating right there that this guy just puked up. And that's what these guys are feeding on. And that's why they get so darn big here. Let me see if I can bring him in there for you, Jake. Nice
there you
job.
go, Dad. Nice brookie.
Nice job. I'll see you about this time next year, like a rocket. You know, a couple of times today we've referenced the forage base that makes these brook trout grow so big. Rainbow smelt is really what the answer is. And when I was fighting that last fish, he actually puked up this smelt, and I saw it pop right out of his mouth. And that's why they grow so fast here, and that's why they grow so big. Very, very few brook trout fisheries you'll find any place where there's a smelt forage base, and that's the key to making this thing such a world-class fishery.
You know, we've talked about it today already, but we're using spinners to be able to catch these fish, and the reason we're using spinners is for one main reason. It's a great search presentation. You know, with the magic of television, Dad, this is a good one. With the magic of television, we're able to make it look like we're catching a bunch of fish in a quick hurry. But really what happens is you're catching a few fish and lots of casts. And a spinner allows you to cover a lot of water and get it done in a hurry. Wow, Dad. That's been kind of the story of today. You know, this has been about the average size fish, I would guess, but they come bigger in Nipigon, but you're never going to hear me complain about a trout like that. They are just gorgeous. Absolutely. I've never caught a fish prettier than a Nipigon brook trout.
No, it's not a good one, but it's a fish.
What the heck is that? That's a perch.
It's a perch. It's one of Nipigon's finest. Well, it's a giant perch too. That's what they say about rooster tails will catch anything. Here's living proof. They'll catch just about everything, including, that's a big perch. I guess that's kind of how my day is going. I catch a pike, I catch a perch, I catch some little trout. Meanwhile, Jake over there is getting trout after trout after trout. You ever have one of those days of fishing? So let's put this guy back and let him grow a little bit bigger, even though I think that's a pretty big perch. Away he goes. The setting for our Lake Nipigon adventure is a place called Pasha Lake Cabins. The owner's name is Chad Thompson, and we've known him for some time and been coming up here for a long time. And he's been very instrumental in teaching us about the Lake Nipigon fishery. If it wasn't for Chad, I don't think we'd have ever caught our first brook trout here. And since, over the years, we've caught dozens and dozens of high quality fish, and I give a lot of that credit to Chad Thompson. You know, there's another group of people that we owe some credit to as well for our brook trout adventure. The folks from Madison Marine, both Kevin and Wynn Madison, have been coming up here and fishing in Lake Nipigon for many, many years. In fact, they actually have a cabin on Lake Nipigon. And when you get a chance to go and stop at their shop sometime, if you walk into their office and take a look at the brook trout mounts that they have the nicest, biggest brook trout mounts I've ever seen anywhere. These guys are really authorities on brook trout fishing, and they dial us into some great spots and some presentations that really has helped us get on these brook trout fast.
Special considerations provided by Trailmaster Trailers, quality custom boat trailers. Additional considerations provided by Procure, ruthlessly effective bait suds.
Dad.
That's good fish, man.
Oh man, this one followed it right up to the boat too and ate it. Really pretty colors on this one.
Nice quality fish. Of course, he wants to get under the boat, doesn't he?
Yeah. Turn the electric motor off there so he can't get in there.
Oh, that is a beautiful fish.
That's scoop.
Oh, beautiful fish.
He's not ready yet.
He wasn't. I was about ready to swing at him. That would have been a problem.
There we go.
Very, very nice, Jake. Rooster Tail does it again. And look at that little spinner just popped out of his mouth.
Wow. Another gorgeous Lake Nipigon brook trout. Wow, I am just speechless. We've covered a lot of water, and like I've said in this show multiple times, the name of the game is covering water. And that's why using these spinners are so important. We can cover a lot of water. We're cruising up and down these banks at 1 mile an hour, so we can cover a lot of water. When we catch one like this, we slow down, we kind of pick apart that area, because a lot of times when there's one, there might be 2 or 3 next to each other. So we kind of pick those spots apart. But in the meantime, in between fish, we're just pounding banks, cast after cast. It's worth it when you get to see these beautiful fish though, man. Absolutely gorgeous.
Another small detail of the style of fishing we're doing is that you'll notice that the guy on the bow of the boat tends to catch the majority of the fish. And if you think about it, it's logical because he's fishing the virgin water. He's throwing forward and he's getting the first crack at these fish oftentimes. So it's a good idea to just take turns and let different people fish on the bow, because that's exactly where most of the action is going to happen. What that means is, since you just caught that fish, Jake, get to the back of the boat where you belong.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about the biology of brook trout. They're actually not trout at all. They're char. They're related to Arctic char. They're also related to lake trout. And they're cold water creatures. Their ideal water temperatures for these fish is about 50 to 55 degrees. And it's in the 40s here now, so that's one of the reasons these fish are a little bit lethargic. But as the water gets to 50, it's going to peak, and that's when your fishing is going to be the best. 55 is still pretty good. But anything north of 55, as that water warms, they'll leave that warmer water, seeking out cooler water. So brook trout are always going to be the most active between 45 and 55 degree water temperatures. Well, believe it or not, ice out here was just a few days ago, and if you look behind me, you can actually see a patch of snow. All the north facing slopes here still have snow and ice on them. So trying to pattern a trip to be close to ice out within a week to 2 weeks after ice out is very good timing for these brook trout. Well, that's good fish. We've worked hard today. That's the one thing. A guy's going to come up here, an average day, you're going to get 10 or 12 of these fish a day. There are exceptional days where a guy might catch as many as 15 or 20 in a day. But there's going to be days too when you only get just a couple. So you got to be willing to put in your time. Here he comes. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
That is a gorgeous fish tail. Look how red that fin on its tail. That tail fin is red.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to grab him very gently out of here and hold him up here. One of our better fish of the day, but you would hardly believe the water depth that this fish was caught in. Maybe 6 inches, 10 inches of water. I'll tell you what, it's been the success for us today is to concentrate in the shallow water. Just a little bit warmer water has made a big difference for us. Wow, I love it. I absolutely love it. Catching these trout, almost starting to feel guilty, believe it or not. Nah. My goodness.
Look toothy to me.
That's not toothy.
Oh man, that is giant.
That's not toothy. He's got tooths, but he's not toothy. This is going to be my best trout of the trip right here, I think, if I'm lucky enough to get him over here by Jake and get him up here where he can scoop him.
Okay. Got him, Dad. That's a giant.
It's really, you've heard about the last cast? Genuinely, that was our last cast before we were going to wrap it up, put the boat on the trailer, and go home. I love it. Fishing, man, does it make your heart pump? If it doesn't, you need to get another hobby. Hey, I'm Mark Romanack. You're watching Fishing 411. Tune in again next week to Fishing 411 for more fishing tips, maybe even some trout tips, who knows?
Closed captioning is provided by Fishhawk Electronics. Fishing 411 is brought to you by Offshore Tackle, Yakima Bait, Starcraft Marine, Jay's Sporting Goods, Cisco Fishing Systems, Smooth Moves, Precision Trolling Data, Niagara Falls, USA, Motor Guide Electric Motors, and Lowrance Electronics.
Try that, Beakers. See if that works for you.
Hey, not every cast can be perfect.